Hi, welcome to the first learning event for historical, philosophical, social perspectives on education. Right, so I'm Dr. Charrington. I'm going to be your lecturer. I'm also your program coordinator for the B.Ed Honors. There's my email address if you need to get hold of me. There's also the WhatsApp group that you all should be connected to by now. The aim of the WhatsApp group is really for peer support, so please rather post your questions or any concerns you have first for the group. Perhaps somebody in the group can answer those questions better than I can. It's really up to the group to set the etiquette for the WhatsApp, so manage that in terms of being mindful of your time, not to be WhatsApping in a panic at 3 in the morning. I only check that group once or twice in the day, so I can't respond to you urgently on the WhatsApp group. So if you do need my attention, then the best bet is really to email me or to use the message app on the ECI. I do check that quite often. Please don't WhatsApp me on my personal number unless it's absolutely urgent or a very private matter. Otherwise, rather use the WhatsApp group or email me if you have something that you want to discuss personally. Right, so today's learning event, we're really going to just get an overview of what this module is about and give you an idea in terms of what is the flexible hybrid learning environment, how does it work, to unpack some of your learning events and structure or the expectations on you as students. Of course, you're going to want to see what your assessment schedule is like. The purpose of this module, and we briefly will start with the ideas of what is philosophy of education and what are we talking about when we are looking at quality education. So the flexible hybrid learning environment, to those who are new to Embry or Stadio School of Education, and especially to our distance learning program. How this works is that we produce weekly structured learning events. So we call them learning events rather than lectures because we try to be more engaging rather than the idea of me being a lecturer, lecturing you, giving you lots of theory to work through. We look at a very interactive way of engaging. The ECI, you should already have been on for your orientation. Now, we have two forms of learning events. The one we call the ECI based, which is like this, which everything is on, it's pre-recorded, loaded, and you have the week to engage with everything. The other format is our face-to-face, which is either through a Zoom, which is a live session. We are also running webinars and discussion forums, and there are small group check-ins, which I will show you how to do on ECI. So it's really a mixture of self-study in terms of your ECI-based module learning events, and there's going to be a few of the face-to-face ones which are live. Now, if you're unable to join the live sessions at the designated times that are sent to you, everything gets recorded, and then within 24 hours, it's uploaded again to the ECI, and then you can watch it. We have a Stadio School of Education YouTube channel, and you will be sent a link, and then you can always refer back to the recorded events of any of the sessions. The requirements, you must have access to internet or data because everything is online. You won't be able to download the video recordings. You can obviously download some of the readings and activities and so forth, but you really need to make sure that you have online connections. You can either work off your computer, laptop, a tablet, and even smartphones, and I will upload for you a tutorial for those of you who do want to access your learning events and your Zoom sessions on your smartphone. You're more than welcome to do that. What is a learning event? Right? A learning event is more than just a lecture, and you will not get a lot of this, of me talking for an hour on PowerPoint. It doesn't work that way, right? So what happens is a learning event is made up of 4 components. So each weekly event will have a presentation, and the presentation will usually be anything between 6 minutes and 20 minutes at the longest. It really provides just an outline of the unit or content and will give you some key things. So in the presentation or overview, I will generally highlight some key concepts and ideas that I want you to focus on as you move through the learning event. And I'll also provide some explanations and prompts to get you thinking. This is followed always by a reading and resources section. Now, in the reading and resources, this is where the bulk of your time should be spent on self-study. We have the 2 recommended readings or prescribed readings that I will refer to through the learning events of which sections or chapters I want you to read. But there will also be recommended readings, and there will be links, and these could be articles, they could be journals, they could be policies, websites, links of interest. Now note that it will be a page full of links to reading, so don't panic, right? Because the idea here is that some readings will require more in-depth analysis, and I will ask you to really look for key messages in there. But other readings are just going to be for skimming through, just to get an idea. If you're interested, here's more reading, it's recommended and interest. So make sure when you watch the overview, you pay attention to how I'm describing the readings and which readings I'm asking you to really go in depth into and understand certain messages, and which readings I'm simply recommending for extra added benefit. But also remember that as teachers, the more you read, the more perspectives you gain, the more understandings you gain. The key here is not to memorize theory and content. The key here is to integrate the new knowledge into your existing experiences and knowledge. And the more you read and the more that it resonates and makes sense to you, the better you will do in this module. Readings are followed by an activity. An activity is really a practical application or engagement to try out these new ideas, right? To practice. It could be watching a video, listening to a podcast, it could be engaging in a discussion forum. It's really an opportunity to think out loud, to share some meaning making with your peers, to ask critical questions, and to access some good quality resources. Once the activity is completed, you will move on to the involvement task. The involvement tasks are graded, so you get a grade for engaging with the task. It's really a formative assessment. The idea here is that I get to track your progress. I also get to give you feedback. These are opportunities to practice what you've learned, to kind of see if you're on the right track, and very importantly, to practice your academic skills. So even if it might be a short reflection or adding an idea to a discussion forum, it will always require you to maintain academic integrity, because that allows me to check if you're referencing correctly, if you're expressing yourself well. And so you'll get a lot of feedback on the involvement tasks to help you keep on track. It's very important that you complete all 4 components. And as we move into this module, you'll see that I will often restrict, and you won't be able to jump to the task. You'll have to do the event in a structured format. So the activity will only open once you've accessed the overview and the readings, and the task will only open for you once you've accessed the activity and completed the activity. So please don't leave your involvement task till the end. There's no extension dates on involvement tasks because they are part of the learning event. So in my view, if you haven't completed an involvement task, then it means you have not fully engaged in the learning event that was uploaded that week. There are 10 ECI-based learning events, which you can do self-study, and there will be 3 face-to-face learning events. Now, what we have done in the BED program is that we've got webinars, and so a webinar series will consist of 1 webinar a month. So for this semester, there will be 3. That means that you will get a short presentation from me explaining what I want you to focus on. You will get pre-readings for the webinars. The webinars themselves will be invited guest speakers. So there will be scholars from around the country that Lauren and I have engaged with, and they will present to you their own work and their own ideas. And there will be a Q&A session. So usually a webinar will be half an hour, 40 minutes of presentation, and 20 to 30 minutes of your own Q's and A's. And we do expect you to be engaging with these guest speakers and really having some great conversations, because it's a wonderful opportunity for your students to really connect and network with scholars around the country. Once we've had the webinar series, we will have a live discussion, and that will be with me on Zoom, where we then engage with some of the topics and themes that emerged from the webinar and connect it directly to the unit or content that we are discussing in this module. Following that, your task will then be a reflective essay. So as I said, there are 3 webinars and 3 reflective essays. Please note that the first webinar already starts on the 19th of August, and I really highly encourage you to try and attend live the webinar and live discussion sessions if you possibly can. But having said that, it will obviously be recorded and uploaded, and you will always be able to engage with it and still submit your reflective essay for the learning event. I just want to pause here and mention notional hours, because it's very important that you understand this is a honours degree, which means it's a postgraduate level. The module moves very fast, and you are expected to do a lot of self-study at a very deep level. And the way notional hours works is this particular module is 18 credits, which means 180 notional hours over the semester, and broken up into the learning events, which are 14 plus the assignments. It really comes down to about 4 to 6 hours a week on just this module, plus your final assessment. So please bear in mind when you're planning for your semester that you have 2 modules. This module is 18 credits, and your theoretical and philosophical perspectives of inclusive education is actually a higher module. It's 24 credits, which means 240 hours a week. So on the very minimal, you're going to be looking at 6 to 8 hours per module per week, right? So make sure that you do leave adequate time. You do get a week to engage with each learning event, and sometimes it can be extended a little bit, right? So make sure that within that week, you are managing to do all 4 components of this module and finishing up your task before your next learning event begins. So giving you a bit of an overview and an outline, here's a schedule for your semester 1. It is available on ECI, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in terms of the content and what we will be covering, but let me highlight some key things. So there are 14 learning events taking place, and these occur on a weekly basis, as I mentioned, so please check the dates. But also note that I usually, my sessions will usually be loaded on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and then you have a week to engage with them. I do send notifications both to your student email and are loaded on the WhatsApp. So as soon as the video becomes available and I can upload it onto ECI, you will receive a notification. So you will know exactly when a learning event is loaded for you to engage with. There are, as I said, 10 ECI based, which are self-study, and then the 3 webinars. We are still confirming the dates for webinar 2 and webinar 3, but it will likely be on a Wednesday of those weeks. So note that the weeks that are mentioned there are simply the Mondays of the week, and as I said, it's loaded usually on a Wednesday or Thursday. Right, have a look at the content and the assessment dates. Very important. Assignments and assessments cannot be extended. So really take a note of the due date so that you know how to plan for your assessments. And talking about assessments, I'm sure this is the most important part. Okay, so this is a continuous assessment module, which means we have tried to make multiple and varied opportunities for you throughout the module to earn marks. For me, assessments are learning. I don't look at assessments as grades and marks. I look at them as opportunities to practice your learning and to improve and develop your own ideas and writing. So you will get a lot of feedback from me on all your assessment opportunities. As I've mentioned, there are 10 ECI-based learning events, which gives you then 10 involvement tasks. And there are 3 webinar reflective tasks, which give you another 10%. So really 20% of your overall mark for this module comes with continuous engagement with your learning events. You get marks for the involvement task just for submitting them. And then the webinars, there are 3 reflections and each one is out of 10, and then we average the 3 ones out of 10. So you really have a lot of opportunities to improve in between. 50% of your module is on formal assignments, and formal assignments means academic writing. The first assignment is based on units 1 and 2, and it's a critical essay. And the second assignment is a group work on comparative education. You will be asked to allocate yourselves into groups of 4. It has to be 4, right? You cannot work on your own. It has to be a group assignment. And no, you can't do it in pairs. It must be groups of 4. So I'm going to allow you to get to know each other and try and find your own sense of group that you feel you could work with. And if you're not allocated by the time that we need to have allocations, then I'm just going to allocate you to a group. So I really highly recommend you start on your own initiative to get to know your fellow students and start grouping yourselves. I will open it after the first webinar so that you have an opportunity to engage on ECI and at the webinar, get to know each other. And then I will open a little app on ECI. And again, I will notify you that I'm doing so, and you can put your members into a group, right? So that it will give us an opportunity to see who's not allocated. The group assignment will involve a presentation. So as a group, you will present a learning event to your fellow group member, well, your fellow students, and there will be a peer assessment aspect to it as well. And then your final assessment is a portfolio of evidence, because it's really important that you showcase your own development and learning. And it will basically be a collection of the different tasks, the assignments, a little reflective piece, and there will also be a take-home timed assessment. It's similar to how we do an open book exam, but online. And what that means is that you will, once you're given a prompt, and it will be on the last week of the semester, you will be given a prompt on what the critical essay is about, and then you'll be given a time frame. It could be anything between 1 to 3 days, and in that time, you've got to work on your essay. So you've got time to identify the good literature, build your argument, write your essay, refine it, check it, and submit it before it closes, right? So it's a timed assessment, but you can work at it over a period of a day or 3 days, right? We will give you much more information on all of these assignments and assessments and portfolios, so don't panic right now. You will get a lot of information, but this is really just to give you an overview so that you can see the benefits here is that you have multiple opportunities to build your marks, really. So it's about development, it's about engaging continuously, it's about accessing different aspects. There's visual aspects, there's written aspects, there's personal reflections, and then there's the timed assessment. So there's really no reason for anybody not to do well in this module if you continuously engage and keep at it. The portfolio of evidence is on a plugin called Exodus. For those of you who are tech savvy, you can already access that. It's on the right corner there. And you are welcome to start populating your CV and profile if you'd like to. But for those who are not tech savvy, please don't panic. We will organize tutorials for you. Debbie, who is our instructional design person at Delta team, is going to do a Zoom session and assist you with setting it all up. But it's really not a complicated thing. You'll see how it works. The idea here is really to engage throughout the module, not to leave it to the last minute. So you'll be required to pull through tasks, involvement tasks, reflections, the assignments that you do. So all of the assessment opportunities that you get throughout the module, you'll be importing and pulling through there. But you're also welcome to include your own things, external things. If you see a video that you like from any of the learning events or outside of the learning events, you read an article, there's a quote, there's an image, anything that resonates as we work through the module, and you start to think, wow, this really reminds me of this discussion or what I read, then you just start pulling it through and importing it into your portfolio. There will be a closing date, and I will be popping in and out of your portfolios regularly to kind of just check in and see how you're doing and where you're going with it, and reminding you if you're not doing it, so that you don't leave it till the last minute, right? Whatever is available on that portfolio when it's a closing date, then that is what gets graded. So please start your portfolio in due course, and as you start to get into the learning events. So things to do. Okay, so let's look a little bit at what this module is about. The purpose of this module is to critically investigate the building blocks of our country's education system so that we have strong foundations when you start engaging in education research in your next semester. When we look at education, we really consider it in terms of the following 4 perspectives or lenses. Firstly, it's important to grasp key theoretical perspectives on education, because theories are your building blocks and they help you to understand the important concepts such as learning, knowledge, teaching. So when we're looking at theoretical perspectives, we're asking questions such as what is learning and how do we learn? What factors are important for meaningful learning to take place? We also look at concepts of learning, education, and schooling from a philosophical perspective, because they're all connected to human development and understanding humanity's meaning and purpose. And these influence questions such as, what is the purpose of education? What skills and knowledge are necessary and relevant for our society to flourish? What makes a school building, or what makes a building a school? How do we define school? And how do different societies and cultures make meaning of terms such as education, learning, and school? Thirdly, we know that education and schooling is not only an individual pursuit, but very much a part of societal development. And therefore, it's important that we also look at key social and historical constructs that have shaped education, shaped society, and continue to do so. When we're looking at the social and historical perspective, we ask questions such as what is the relationship between power and education? Whose knowledge counts? Why? Whose knowledge is marginalized? Why? And education for who? And finally, we hone in on the country's current education system, because in order to be critical and to critically evaluate what is, we need to look at the past, present, and future possibilities. We also need to look at alternative systems, alternative ideas around the world, in order to really be able to connect what we're seeing in our country with what we think might be meaningful or better. When working through this module, I also want you to keep in mind the following: that education, and specifically inclusive education, is multidimensional and exists on many levels. So while we tend to focus inclusive education in terms of teaching and learning and classroom pedagogy or classroom practice, it's just as important to remember that inclusive education also exists in how schools or educational institutions are managed and the institutional culture. And these are driven by the curriculum, as well as by national policy and papers. So to implement transformation or to change practice in terms of curriculum, schools, or classroom, we have to consistently create awareness and advocacy for change. So as future inclusive education scholars and critical thinkers, you need to broaden your perspective, and you need to look at inclusive education and education in a more holistic manner. And the importance here is that working through this module, and especially getting to the end portfolio and take-home assessment, you need to start positioning yourself in terms of education and in terms of inclusive education and your emergent thinking and where you are positioning yourself on these multiple layers. It doesn't necessarily have to be a classroom pedagogy, it could be on multiple layers. So what is the purpose of education and how does it serve society? I always like to start this module by going right to the end of what is it that we really want to achieve at the end of the semester. If our aim as education scholars and researchers is to shape the country's education system to be truly inclusive and meaningful for all learners, then we first need to have a very clear vision of what we want to create. What do we want to work towards? To do that, we need to start by critically unpacking important concepts, theories, and ideas that we have become very accustomed to using freely and not really thinking critically about. And so I challenge you to unlearn these in order to relearn and to transform what is to what could be. We start by looking at the root word education, and this comes from the Latin term educere, which means actually to bring out or to bring forth something from within, and ducare, which means to lead. Now, the Aztecs I'm using as an example had a very well developed and documented theory on education and learning. And this centered around ideas of nurturing and raising children to be contributing members of society. This included not only gaining practical experience and useful skills, but also communicating to the next generation intellectual heritage of the past for the purpose of development and healthy integration and belonging within the community. So they believed that education began at home. It was then supported by formal mentoring, and just as importantly, was reinforced by the community. We can then see that inherently it's a process of transmission and socialization and enculturation embedded in these conceptualizations. If we look at more modern definitions of education, we start to see that the concepts of teaching and learning and organizations such as schools have replaced the role and function of home and community or the collective mentoring. There is now also an institutional education where the purpose of learning has shifted from your personal development and belonging within the community to your purpose being the skills and values you offer in terms of the industrialized world and its production. Further, the idea that knowledge exists within the individual and needs to be brought forth or fostered or strengthened through leadership has been replaced by the idea that individuals need to receive or be given knowledge through instruction. I would suggest that as you engage in this module, you begin to unpack for yourself the following 2 questions, and perhaps revisit your thinking about this regularly in the module. What do you understand by the concept of education, and what do you believe the purpose of education in society is? I like to introduce in the model the idea of seminal thinkers and scholars who greatly influenced education debates and shifted thinking about schools and schooling. You'll find some links and resources to these great thinkers on the reading page, but you're not required to engage with them on a very deep analytical level. They're simply there to broaden your perspectives. And for those who enjoy to do extra reading from what I present here, then you have the links to do so in your own time. Bear in mind that some of these ideas and seminal thinkers are going to inspire you, but others not so much, and that's okay. We're not here to all be right. We're here to learn. We're here to broaden our understanding, right? And to be exposed to different types of thinkers. There's no right way to think about education and learning. And as I said, this module is not about theory or giving me back what you are reading about. This module is really about exploring multiple ideas. And more specifically, it's about developing and nurturing your perspectives and your ideas. You need to have a voice and to have a say in shaping education discourse and debates. And in order to do that, you need to know what you stand for. You need to know what your position and your philosophy is on education and learning. And in order to do that, you need to motivate and support your thinking. And that comes from building on or challenging current knowledge and ideas. And that is really what the idea of introducing you to great thinkers is about. This week's great thinker is Alvin Toffler. He's an American educationist and futurist who wrote several books with his wife predicting trends of the future. His breakthrough book is this one called Future Shock, which describes a disorientating experience of living in times of constant change and disruption to the norm, which I think we can safely say we are all pretty much experiencing right now, a great disruption to the norm. He has made several predictions about society, but bear in mind that his writing was really seminal in the 70s and 80s, and yet we're living now in the 21st century, and a lot of what he said has actually come to pass, and it's quite amazing to read some of his predictions. Some of it obviously did not. But let's look at his contribution to education. Mr. Toffler was an adverse opponent to the traditional public education system, and he was very vehement about its inability to adapt to changes and the needs of society. He believed that instead of teaching children content, knowledge, and skills, schools should rather be instructing them on how to learn, unlearn, and relearn. He proposed an education system which focused on how to classify and reclassify information, how to evaluate the veracity of information, how to change categories where necessary, how to move from the concrete to the abstract and back, and most importantly, how to look at problems from new directions and creative solutions. For him, the purpose of education was for individuals to become competent in the art of learning and teaching themselves. The knowledge and skills necessary for a given job will change more rapidly, resulting in the need to both learn and relearn. This also means that more shifts from one job to another, as certain jobs become obsolete or at least in lesser demand. In such a context, it is no longer about building a set of skills that will serve you well for a lifetime, as much as developing the capacities to adapt, learn, and unlearn, and be the designers of your own learning goals and pathways. And I think this quote from his thinking resonates really well with the current times we're in and the uncertainty of what is education going to be like, which industries are going to survive through this lockdown and pandemic, and which new industries or new jobs are going to emerge. And yet, how is our curriculum, or will our curriculum match this changes? Or are we still in 5 years' time going to be teaching the same curriculum in the same way, in the same form of education and schooling, and not adapting and adjusting as Mr. Toffler is encouraging education to do? What I really take from his work about education is that education and learning cannot be static, as society is not static. It is constantly shifting, it is constantly evolving, and therefore the most humane and compelling future of education is to have a vision of multiple futures. On page 463 of his book, he writes, "We need a multiplicity of visions, dreams, and prophecies, and images of potential tomorrows." And that's very, very important, because how can you have a philosophy of what you want education to be if you are not thinking of education as a constantly evolving dynamic construct? So let's look at the readings for this week's learning event. There are 2 key readings that I would like you to work through from UNESCO. And I know that in the other module, you've also been asked to look at the Descartes framework for action. So the first reading is really a review of, it's a press release talking about the Descartes meeting that was going to happen and what the initiatives and the purpose of that meeting was for. And the second document is the actual frameworks for action that were developed as an Education for All by 2015. The third reading I want you to do is by Hala, and it's really a review of Toffler's key ideas in terms of, he spoke about the 3 phases or waves of change and progress that a society experiences. And of course, bear in mind again that his work was published in the 80s, and so he talks a lot about currently being in the 3rd wave or 3rd phase, which is all about knowledge, the information age. And bear in mind, we're already in that information age and are actually moving into the 4th wave of the fourth industrial revolution. But that will be a discussion for another learning event. So just bear in mind that what you're reading about Alvin Toffler is written about what the time and era we're already in and moving out of, which is an interesting thing to kind of look back on that. For now, these three pieces, don't get weighed down in the details. I'm not going to ask you for the key themes or of change and progress, and I'm not going to definitely ask you for definitions. What I really want you is, when you're reading these three things, and I forgot to click, when you're really reading these three readings, focus on the questions I posed earlier. What is education? Who's education for? And try and start to conceptualize your own ideas emerging as you are reading these things. I also want you to start thinking about, we are now in the year 2020, and these frameworks were supposed to be achieved by 2015. So where are we? How are you seeing these in terms of where we were in 2000? And as a, not just a country developing all of this, but also as the world, the ideas that we were thinking about inclusive education, education for all, quality education, and where are we now 20 years later, beyond that. Your activity. The activity is getting to know one another, because, as I said before, you need to work as a group. And so it's really, really important, because I know that group work can be really onerous, and if you connect with the wrong people, and it's just frustrating. So get to know your fellow students. The activity is there. It's a little forum. You simply can click on add an entry or add a discussion. You will see a little pop-up come up, and where it says concept, because I've used a glossary and it's the best thing to do, but unfortunately it still thinks it's a glossary. So when you add an entry, it says concept, put your name. Where it says definition, you simply copy and paste. I've got 7, I think, questions there. You simply copy and paste the questions into the definition. You respond with your answers. Don't worry about the keywords. Attach a photo of yourself. I know, horrible, but attach a photo of yourself. You see what I look like. I want to see what you look like, so I can put a face to a name, and other people can see what you look like. Make sure it's not too large, please. It mustn't be like, it doesn't have to be your most best professional. It's just a head and shoulders photo, or if you want to show a photo of yourself in a context that's really important to you, that's fine. Upload that. And that's the activity. Please, after you do that, go and check, because you want to know what other people, what your other fellow students look like, who they are, and to start kind of connecting. You're welcome to also respond to other people's profiles and say, hey, so-and-so, nice to meet you. Right, that's your activity. Very easy. Shouldn't take you more than like 15 minutes to do. The task. What is your vision of education? I want to get to know where you are right now. You all come with a wealth of experience that I'm really excited to kind of engage with you in the webinars and discussion forums. I have loaded a short video at 6 minutes. I love this guy. He's called Prince EA. He's a spoken word poet. If you don't know what that's about, go look at the video. He presents, he sued, I'm suing the school system. After you've watched the little video, read the article, Reshaping Schools from the Ground Up. This was an interview done with Alvin Toffler, and it really gives you a brilliant overview of his ideas about education and what education should be about. Right? Once you've engaged with both the reading and the video, you will submit a little write-up. It's a short little thing on the forum to engage with a question posed on the discussion. Feel free to respond to your fellow students, right? So 2 very easy things to do: a short video, an article that's basically a web-based. It's not an academic hard reading article. As I said, you don't need to spend 3 hours on this. You're just picking out key ideas. What resonates with you? What do you agree with? What do you like? What isn't resonating with you? What are you going, Mr. Toffler, I'm not so sure so much about that. I've got my own experience. That is really what I'm looking for when you're engaging. What resonates, what stands out for you? What are new ideas that you didn't think of before? What are things that you've heard many times but don't agree with? That's the kind of responses I want to see. All you have to do is upload your task or engage with the discussion, and just by doing that within the week, you get your very first mark for this module. Okay, so this is it. This is our first learning event. I hope that it has started you to think and to get excited about this module. Please engage with the readings, the tasks, the activity. If there's anything you're struggling with at any time through this module, if you're not understanding me, if I talk too fast, if I talk too slow, if I'm slurring my words, if you're not enjoying something, if you're struggling with something, I'm here to learn from you, you're here to learn from me, and so please communicate. Let me know regularly how you're doing, and I look forward to our conversations and engagements. So thank you very much, and keep well, stay safe,